This is Lucid again with the Dojo is Burning on Highjaw US. In this video we'll be going over how to keybind your abilities to your action bars, and in another segment, how to start using macros to help improve your mastery of World of Warcraft. The inclusion of keybinding and macros will improve every aspect of your play. For certain roles, macros are vital to your overall success in the game. With that said, let's get started on how to implement keybinding into your WoW arsenal. Now it's a beautiful day in Orgrimmar. As you can see, the sun is setting. It's pretty outside. And uh-oh, I accidentally came off my mount. But my UI is off, and I can't click anything. So you have to keybind. And that is the point of the video today, is to teach people how to actually use keybinds to make their life a little bit easier. So I just use that as just a bad example of how it can be useful for some reason if you need to when you're trying to make a pretty video and you don't want your UI showing up, how you can actually make that happen through keybinding as well. So letting you see that, I kind of wanted to start with a fresh slate here. This is like my 7th alt, Shadow Priest named Nutrix, which is Latin for nurse, which I thought was kind of a cool name for any kind of priest. But yeah, Shadow's pretty cool. So that's her. Either way, we're going to go ahead and get started on how you actually use keybinds and basically kind of like how you want to put your keybinds together and how you want to put your abilities together and kind of like what importance in like where you should put your healing spells, where you should probably put your like defensives and your big cooldowns. And these are just things that I've done, but I've also seen other better players doing this as well. So it's just a good rule of thumb to at least try it out. So we're going to start by hitting escape. You hit keybinds. First thing you're going to see is miscellaneous or movement keys, chat, all these different buttons that you can use. And it's pretty easy to just kind of get lost in the whole thing. Now, you're used to seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 0, minus, equal. Like, that's what everybody's used to. That's what we've all been seeing since we started playing. Now, I'm going to show you another way. Now, there's action bar, which is that. You can change buttons on the action bar. Like if I wanted to make Psychic Scream a completely different button, I can move that over. And the way you want to move abilities over is by holding shift and then putting them down, because if you don't, what ends up happening is you'll actually click the ability. So it's just something to think about, nothing small or nothing really big at all. So we know this is the 6th key. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to action button 6, click it, and then we're going to put it on a key that we're going to use pretty often. So I'm going to put it on tab. Now that does take away your tab targeting nearest enemy function. I personally don't use tab targeting, so not really a big loss for me. Now you can switch all those things if you need to find your targeting. You can target nearest enemy, and we can make that like shift tab or control tab or even alt tab. Let's see what alt tab does. Ooh, brings in my screen. Forgot about that. Damn you, Windows. But can't use alt tab, so I'm leaving it blank. I don't need it anyway. So we're going to go to the multi-action bar. Now this is where you're actually going to be binding most of your stuff. But you can see at the bottom here where 1 through 5 is, and then tab. Psychic Scream is now on tab. So if I want to Psychic Scream something, Fear 'em all, tab it up. Alright, so as you can also see, this levitate, which I used to save my life earlier, it was bound to the F key. Now I am going to change that around, but I had a reason to using my F key because it's one of the quickest ones. So if you have an ability that you really want to get too fast, F is a really good one to use. Now, the way I generally like to do my key bindings is I leave my WASDs alone, obviously, because those are your movement keys. Q and E are for strafing. I would really suggest you learn how to strafe properly and how to use your mouse to basically kind of make your movement for you. Like just a short, for instance, like I'm strafing here, but I'm also moving, but I'm only using the mouse. I can switch that around. And in big fights, you're going to want to be able to do that. So you can also do this with your WASDs. but you really want to know how to learn how to hold your right click down, use your movements, because the last thing you want to be is this guy, Mr. Keyboard Turner. That is not how you want to play the game. It's not fluid, it doesn't work the way it should, and it's just way easier to learn this way. So all I'm doing is holding W down and using my right click to do that. Now, that was kind of a weird segue or a weird tangent I took just to kind of give the basics of movement, but it's just something that, you know, since this is mostly for beginners, this is probably just a good little thing to learn anyways. So I'm going to stop running now and get into the actual key binding part of the video. So we key bind. You're going to go to your, basically your bottom left, should be the very first one, which is going to be Shadow Fiend. Now, I like to always do my big cooldowns first on the top screen because I want to be able to see those fairly easily. So I usually put those to the left. So I have my Shadow Fiend here, I have a Vampiric Embrace, and I have Dark Ascension. So I'm going to go ahead and put all those on, just whatever I feel like putting them on. So for this one, I'm just going to click Not Bound. And for Shadow Fiend, I am just going to click in my middle mouse wheel. Now, I should put an M3. So you should see an M3 right here. And that's just basically letting you know. Now, that takes away your move and steer function. Don't need it anyway. So it's not even a big deal. Now, for the next one, I'll probably put it on a Shift modifier, which basically means that you hold down Shift and then the button that you want to use. Now, I'm going to do Shift middle mouse wheel. So that way I know all my cooldowns are on my middle mouse wheel. Shift middle mouse wheel. Now that brings up SM3. So now you can see the two differences here. You have your mouse 3, your shift mouse 3. Now for this last one, I'm probably going to put it maybe on a control mouse 3. Let's see what happens. Control mouse 3. So now you have CM3. So the rest of the abilities, the way I usually like to do it is like any kind of interrupt, CC type stuff, I usually like to kind of have them grouped together. And then I would put mostly like my defensive cooldowns, like Dispersion, Fade type things, Power Word Shield, and Shadow Mend for like healing stuff, and then Leap of Faith. And I'm going to tell you a rationale on how I'm going to keybind Leap of Faith, and you can do this for other abilities too. And F, I'm going to change that key, but you should always make it to where your muscle memory just basically makes it for you. But like after through trial and error and basically a long time of doing it, you eventually learn which keys work best for you in a given situation. And eventually what you'll start doing is for all your alts, you should be making all the same keybinds for all of them. Like all your interrupts would be like the R key, and that's what I usually do. So like for silence, I know it's the fourth one. I'm going to click the Not Bound, hit R. Now all my silences, now I put that for Rebuke or what would be a couple other of the abilities that interrupt, but that doesn't really matter. Kick, stuff like that. Just an easy way to be able to remember is to kind of give all your characters the same keybind ability. That way your body can kind of get used to the muscle memory of using that keybind for that. So if I need to interrupt something, I know to hit R. So like for, let's see, Mind Control, I'll probably make that like a Shift R. And then for Shackle Undead, Control R. Now what that does is it takes off your toggle frame rate display function. So I don't need to know how many FPS I have because I have LVUI and it tells me I have 60 FPS or 43. I wonder why I went to 43, that's sad. 60. So I usually stay at 60, I don't know why it's not. But either way, let's see, where we'd go from there is the other abilities, like my Dispersion. I usually always put like my big defensive cooldown, like my bubble type stuff, like the big stuff, the ones that are longer cooldowns. You're going to want to usually, I put that on my Z key. Now the reason why I use my Z key is because it's close to my WASD, and it's easy to hit with just like my ring finger. Like if I'm moving around, I hit Z, boom. Now, bad part about that is if you're not paying attention, you can't accidentally hit it, but you just get used to not doing that. So for Fade, I'm probably going to use Shift Z, let's see, for power word shield, I'm probably going to use X because it's right next to Z and it is also a close to the movement keys. Now it took off my sit move, and if you want to change all those things, you can go to your movement keys and you can put like sit. Let's do Alt X, and I like to put this as like a comma, just so it's easy. It's out of my way. I'm not going to accidentally hit it for any reason. And then you kind of go from there. Now any kind of heal I usually do as a shift modifier, and there's also you can click the person and then use the ability, or you can do what I'm going to teach you later in the video, is a mouse over macro where all you literally have to do is hover your mouse over it, use the ability, and it's going to use it on them. Now that's a whole different section, but we'll be going over that fairly soon. So we'd go here. I'm going to, let's see, where would it be? Shift space. Now it took off my toggle screen function. I don't really do PvP, so that really doesn't affect me much, but just so we can find it, I'm pretty sure it's on here. Toggle score screen. Let's just put it on like F1. So that'll take off target self function. So that's the thing, is you gotta kind of know which ones you want to lose and which ones you want to gain in terms of which keybinds you use. Now, I'm never going to really need to do the target self thing, so that's not really a big deal. Now, for Leap of Faith, now I saved Leap of Faith specifically for a reason, is when you do certain things, like things that are going to pull something towards you, or if you need to move fast, like if you're about to use like an engineering nitro boost, I tend to want to make those into mouse wheel movements. Now, and you want to do that with a shift modifier, because if you don't do it with a shift modifier, you're basically going to lose your zoom in and zoom out function on your camera, and that's not acceptable. So for Leap of Faith, what you're going to want to do is hold down the not bound, hold shift, and then scroll your mouse wheel down. Now it says shift mouse wheel down. So now, once you learn how to do the mouse over macro, which I'm going to show you later on in the video, basically I could take any character that's in my group, hover over them or hover over their nameplate, hold down shift and the mouse wheel down, and it'll automatically pull them to me. So that makes it a lot easier than just clicking it, and it's just a pain in the butt that way. So that's pretty much it. And I'm not really going to have to change all these. I mean, I'm going to, just for the sake of completionism, but I'm going to put that to C, and I'll probably put Mass Dispel to V. Now, generally, what you want to do is anything east or right of T, G, and B, you want to avoid. Like T, G, and B is kind of like your boundary. Like I wouldn't go much further than that, just because your fingers are going to have trouble getting there quickly. And if you do need to use more than those, you just make shift or control or alt modifiers for that particular button. So like you can make shift T, shift T, control T, alt T. You can also use your F1 through 12 buttons if you really needed to, or you can make shift 1, shift 2, shift 3, shift 4, shift 5. I mean, there's so many different combinations. You just do what feels comfortable for you. I tend to minimize the amount of shift modifiers I have, and control modifiers. I like to just use the RT, G, B, V, F, C, X, Z, and that's usually enough. Now you add a few controls here and there, and you use your mouse. Now if you don't have a mouse that has a middle mouse wheel, make any combination that you want that works for you. Now the only other thing that I really think you should really bind is a potion. Now the potion I generally like to put on my mouse. I have multiple buttons on my mouse, so I'm just going to click to that. So middle mouse 5, and then I could have another button like my shadow form. I could have that on middle mouse 4. So I can just hit OK, and then I can put my shadow form on. And just real quickly, that Hakili add-on I was telling you about, this is it right there. And I told you about this in a previous video, but it's basically kind of like a rotation helper if you're having trouble learning how to play the class optimally. This is just a good starter to kind of get yourself started. Now it literally tells you the key that you need to press to make this work. So be like 1, and the next ability would be 2, then the next ability would be 3. So we're going to start with that. And 2, 3, just Mind Flay. and keep that going for a minute. And that's pretty much it. Now, if we want to start popping some cooldowns, I'm doing that now. Now, I know my DPS on this particular character is not all that good, but this is generally what you do, and it's not hard to do. And you can start throwing in all your key bindings, like if I need to shift Z or Z, I can do it real quick. X, I can throw that in there really quickly, and just a lot that you can do. And use your R to silence them, mind control, and shackle undead, levitate. I mean, there's so many things that you can do. That's mass dispel, and I've never once hovered over this. Once you learn where everything's at, you just click that by muscle memory, and that's what the beauty of the whole thing is once you learn how to do that, you can be doing things on the move, and you can still be a clicker if you want to be, but it's never going to be optimal in terms of the amount of output. Actions per minute, APM. If you've ever heard this term in any kind of video game, Overwatch has it, WoW has it, any kind of twitchy type video game like that, your actions per minute show how much you're able to do in a given amount of time. Now, you're never going to be able to maximize your actions per minute if you click, because you're not paying enough attention to what's around you as well. Because if you're looking down at your bars, trying to like, well, I need to click this, you're probably standing in fire, or you're going to miss a mechanic that's going to end up getting you killed. So keybinding makes things a lot easier. Add-ons like Achilles make it where you can just kind of learn your rotation. And what you really need to learn is what a lot of the higher end people would call situational awareness. Now, once you learn about situational awareness and like what's going on around you and how to react to it, that's when you're going to get to be a better player overall. So this is the first part of the video. The next part is going to be a part about macros. Now, the macros, it's pretty in depth. I'm going to make it very simple. And I'm also going to give some resources on where you can go to learn about other macros and kind of just go down the rabbit hole of that. Now, I won't go through a whole video on exactly how to lay the syntax down for a macro, because that could get very confusing very quickly. So I will give resources on what you can use to basically copy and paste your own macros into the game. Makes it really easy. And then from there, I'm going to teach you about mouse over macros, because the mouse over macros are basically I think probably the most important macro in the game, because all it would literally mean is instead of me even having to click this training dummy, I just hover over it, boom, use silence on it, and I never even clicked it. I just hovered over it. See, because you see when you hover over it, how it highlights, same thing, highlights him, highlights him, highlights him, highlights him. So if I highlight him, hit R, and he was trying to fight me, or I needed to heal him or throw a power word shield on him, you can totally do it. I'm not in his party, so it's not going to let me. Either way, these are the things that are going to make you a much better player. So I'm just hoping that this helps, and we're going to get over to the next part of the video. For this portion of the video, we're going to be going over macros. Now, I switched over to my my main, which is a paladin, and I play all 3 specs. So I did the main part of this is going to be about mouse over macros, and I use this mostly on my whole paladin, but it can be used for any class. Almost all the abilities can be used with mouse over macros in some way. And the main reason I picked a Holy Paladin or a healer in general is because that is usually when you're going to use mouse over macros the most. Now, I'm not in a group, so I just kind of came to a place where there might be a few people, so I can kind of just give you a general gist of how this works. Now, I'm going to put on my UI, and instead of having to click this particular person, which you can do still, I mean, if you want, but it's not ideal. Now, I'm just going to kind of turn away from them a little bit, and then I'm going to use my mouse, and I'm going to go over to him, click, and I didn't click anything. All I did was hit my number 1 key. I hit my number 2 key, my number 3 key. It's all the same thing. So I put all those heals, I never clicked them, not one time. I can do the same thing, go over to here. It's very easy to do. Now, the reason why this is so important is if you're in a dungeon or raid group, you're going to have all the, the raid frames, party frames, and you can move those with LVUI too to where they're right here. But basically, instead of having to click each frame, you're going to be able to just strictly hover over it, use your ability. Hover over it, use an ability. And that you have to do that for every single ability, which can be kind of tedious, but once you do it, it's super easy. And it's so much better to do it just overall. Now, there are add-ons that kind of do this for you. I think Click, I think Voodoo does it. And then you can use Grid for rain frames, and there's lots of other things that you can do. But generally, I think just the LVUI works fine for my purposes, at least, because I don't really raid heal. I just kind of do dungeons, so it's just 5 boxes I have to worry about at any one time. So to do macros, you obviously would hit escape to get to the interface part of it. Hit macros, and it's going to bring you a list of macros. Now you can have character specific macros or general macros. I just kind of put most of mine in general macros because it doesn't really matter for me. I mean, you can make them just character specific. Now I'm going to try to find one that's fairly simple to go through. Now I'm going to put a list of all of these, or at least the mouse over macro, on the description to the video so that you'll be able to find these fairly easy. Now I'm trying to find one that I can use pretty easily. So flash of light would be a good one. Now the hashtag show tooltip part of this is basically a way of saying when you hover over it, it shows you the tooltip, which would be right here. So you expend a large amount of mana to quickly heal a friendly target, and slash cast, and then this is the target macros. You do not have to remember all this because I'm just going to copy and paste this into the description, but it's basically the target equals the mouse over, so that's that. And then if I don't have a target, it'll automatically just go to me. So I can go to him, I can go to me. I can also hover over me, do the same thing. But really, you don't even have to hover over yourself. I can just go to him, heal him, holy shock him, holy light them, and then just there's so many different things that you can do with this. But basically, what you do is you put your show tooltip, then the name of the ability. Now, sometimes some people say you don't have to put the name of the ability. I've just always done it, so just it's up to you. You can put just hashtag show tooltip to be able to still see what it actually does. Because if you don't do that, it just basically shows nothing at all. Let me just try to find a for instance here. Well, I do on my ret. I don't have a reckoning. I don't have a reckoning with a show tooltip on it, so it doesn't, because I know what reckoning does. And that's the taunt, by the way, just so you know. Now you just slash cast the mouse over macro, and then the ability, you have to hit space on it once. Like you have to put a space between where that bracket is and then the name of the ability. They can't be touching or the mouse over macro won't work. So you just put the name of the ability, flash of light, and that's it. You just pretty much just copy and paste this portion of the ability, and the way you copy things in game is you would just hit Control C. Say I wanted to make a new ability. New. You basically want to find the icon that matches what the ability looks like. So you need to try to find Flash of Light, which is right here. And then we'll just put FOL and then hit OK. And then you would just hit Control V and that pastes it. Now, remember how I said that you had to put a space between? Just make sure you put a space. Flash of light. Now, that's the same macro that I already have here. But it allows, that's basically what you do. And there's so many more than that. Just going to kind of go over some of them. Some of these you have to find on websites. Because they're a little too complicated even for me. Like, I don't try to remember how to do all these. A lot of them are what they call scripts. if you wanted to do something in like a guild chat, or if you wanted to slash say something or slash yell something, you would put slash Y for yell. So go and slash roll, and let's see who else can get lucky tonight. Slash wink, and that'll basically allow all those things to be said in guild. Let me just see if it still works. So you wink slyly. So go on and roll so you can get lucky tonight. Now that's just a random macro that you can use. Sometimes add-ons will add macros to it. Like, a lot of these are really old. I haven't used some of these macros in years. So you can also target specific characters to use an ability. Like if you're in a dungeon or raid and you just want to make sure that you get that ability off, you can slash target the name of the, like say, slash target dummy, or slash target, the Dragon Maw War Banner, and then cast an ability on it. That way, it automatically, when you push that button, it automatically targets that target, so you can be on it, ready to go. Then these are more of the mouse over show tooltip lines. Remember I told you earlier that show tooltip doesn't have to actually have the name of the ability. It's just something I've always done. It still shows the name of the ability, and sometimes it doesn't. I've just kind of noticed it. Sometimes it doesn't if you do that. So just kind of have to case by case it. Show tooltip for that is Beacon of Virtue. Bestow Faith was my 5 key. Decursive you really don't need, because if you have the add-on and you have a curse, you just hit this little square. It literally decurses for you, so it can basically cleanse just with a mouse click. And that's what I use. I don't even have cleanse on my bars because of that, because I can just go over, hover over it. It tells you how many seconds it has on it, like on the poison or disease or whatever it is, or the curse or whatever it is that you have on you, that it can cleanse. And if you can cleanse it, you'll be able to click it and get rid of it. And then you have your like blessings of protection. Same deal. You can mouse over somebody and hit the button and it'll do it. Now blessing of sacrifice. Let's see what I've got. Bubble breath. Yeah, you can even do bubble hearth macros. These used to work. I don't think they work anymore. So you still have to hit bubble and then your hearthstone. But I used to have a funny he who hearths and runs away lives to slay another day as a slash yell. Now you can just put slash Y. Does the same thing. Let's see. You can also put certain abilities together. You can put one ability that's off the global cooldown and one that's with the global cooldown, and they should sync up. Like certain unused trinkets and an ability, you should be able to slash use trinket name and slash cast the ability that you want to use. So I don't have any unused trinkets, but just say this one does. You would just put slash use void dash twisted titan shard. There's also ways that you can do it to where you just make it use the item slot. So it'd be like, I'm trying to find one where it does that, because like I said, I have a lot of abilities. So like you can use it for goblin glider kits. You can use the same button to cancel goblin glider kits. You can also do that for things like the divine shield, which is your bubble. I never call it divine shield, I just call it bubble. But you can use the same button, like you use it for ice block, like slash cast ice block and then slash cancel ice block, do the same thing. And then this was the goblin glider slash use 15. I believe 15 is your trinket. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So yeah, it would use this if this was an unused trinket. So this looks like it's an unused trinket. I don't even know what it's going to do. So let's see. And it used, basically it used the cloak. That's weird. Well, that's something. Alright, so usually that's not how that works, but whatever. Alright, we'll just keep moving on. Let's see, still mostly mouse over macros. And the /use slot thing that I told you about, you just have to play around with that. I guess that one kind of worked funky. Let's see if there's any other major ones. You can do funny ones like /mount special, to where say you get on a flying mount. Usually if you're on a ground mount and you hit space, it does this little funny animation. So if you do that on a flying mount, it makes you go up in the air. So instead, you hit your mount special, which I don't actually have on the keys for this particular spec. I'll put it on there, and now when I hit it, it does the little mount special thing. Let me find a cooler looking one. Not as cool. Come on, give me something cool. There we go. Now that's pretty cool. I always like that mount. But that's pretty much it on how you use macros. I mean, there's so much more to it than that. This is just a starter, basically introduction on how to at least get started. You can also make funny little things like the STFU truck with the characters if you want to do that, but that's not something that you really need to do. I'll give a few. Oh yeah, this is a really cool when water jet was a thing. Let's see, wisdom. I used to have one for the pet freeze for frost mages. I would just have that basically keybound and macroed, so I could just use it really quickly. And I'm trying to think of a cool website that you can use to look for macros. You can just Google macros for your class, or you can try to maybe go to somewhere like icyveins.com. They have really good guides, especially if you're new to the game. You just go to Icy Veins, and then I'll just take you to the beginning. Is you go to WoW, and then classes, and then you can pick tank healing, WoW classic guides, whatever you want. Leveling a certain tune. I'm just going to pick Retribution for now, and then you can look up all these different things that you're going to really need to know. And I'm going to go to the macro and the add-ons portion of it, and it's basically going to show you like generic mouse over macros, lay on hands mouse over macros. So you could lay on hands somebody, like say a tank's about to die and you don't have time to click real quick, like as fast as you need to. You can just hover over the character or hover over the character box, like basically the frame, the unit frame, and hit your I use my tilde key for my lay on hands, so I can just boom, just hit it real quick. And that's basically it. You can even do /cast for your interrupts. I generally like to click the frame for that, because if you don't, sometimes you can mess that up. So it's really up to you on how you really want to use it, but there's so many combined abilities and things that you can put together that it works out a lot better. Now, another thing you can do is, like, say you have an ability like Consecration or Wake of Ashes. They are both, oh darn it, I gotta switch to a different spec to show you this, but it is kind of important to know this. And it saves you basically action bar space by doing this. There we go. So, action bar space, and you have Wake of Ashes and Consecration. Now, they're on the same talent tree, so you'll never be able to use them both at once. But if you use the certain macro, which makes it to where you can use your Consecration and your Wake of Ashes on one button, so you never have to use two buttons for the talents. Now I'm going to switch over just really quickly to the game so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But it makes it pretty good once you learn how that works. Having to move some things around real quick. But you have your Consecration and your Wake of Ashes. Now, you can put that on one single frame, like right here, my F key. you can make a macro that makes it to where whenever you switch between the two, you don't have to like drag and drop the ability each time you switch. Like say if I switch here and I get consecration, you see how this is grayed out? Well, I don't have to do that now. I can just basically have one button that does both. So I'm going to do that really quick just because. So I'm going to copy that. You know, right clicking it and copying it just like you would anything else. And then you're going to come into the game, hit macro, new, and then you just find the ability that is like consecration or wake of ashes, and I'm going to use mostly wake of ashes. So I'll put wake cons, it's like for consecration. So and then you hit Control V, shows tooltip. It will put in those talents for you, and that should work. I actually haven't not tried this particular one yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. I don't want to be in a group, but that's really nice of them. Let's see. Sure, I will join the group. Well, I guess this will give me a good opportunity to show them how to do stuff. Like, well, how to show you how to do stuff, really. Let's keep going. Like that. Well, now I want you back. So now I can heal him, and I'm not even touching him, but I'm basically just hovering over him, and I can hop him. I can lay on hands him if he was hurt. There's so many different things you can do with it. And I've never clicked him. He's not clicked. I'm targeting the training dummy. So basically, I could be fighting this thing and then go to him and still heal him. And that makes that pretty cool. So I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to see if this actually works, because I have not tried this yet. And it does seem to work. So I'm going to switch talents and see if this is actually going to work for me. And it should. I just have to wait for the ability to come off cooldown. That is the one crappy part. And I will say thank you. And he gripped me. Now if you remember that one part of the video with the Shadow Priest, and he gripped me, or when I was telling you about grips, that would have been shift mouse wheel down. That's kind of like intuitive, that it brings the character closer to you, and you can do that with a mouse over macro. Say they're falling off the cliff in PvP, you can just hover over them, use that ability, bam, they're back in the fight. And I've actually done that in a BG a long time ago. I felt like a boss, and dude was like, how'd you do that? I was like, mouse over macro. So that's just one small thing. Where was that? Eye of the Storm, I think. God, that was on the bridge. Someone, I think a shaman typhooned him off, and I didn't get hit by it, but I was able to leap of faith them back on, and that was pretty cool. So let's just see. We'll switch this, and let's see what it does. It should still work. So we'll use the F key, and now it's consecration instead. So those are just small things, and you really just have to kind of go online, learn about the macros. This is just a very, very simplistic version I gave you. Mostly what the number one things you're going to want to learn are slash cast space the ability slash use space the item that you want to use. Like, let's say the potion of focused resolve. There might be like a trinket and a potion that you want to put together, and sometimes those work together and sometimes they don't. The WoW's always kind of changing how like global cooldowns, and it used to be able to just macro all this stuff together. There was this thing called the Swifty macro. It was like a one shot boom, you're dead macro, because you could use all these abilities at once, and that's kind of why they got rid of it, were abilities like that where you could just do all this damage and all these abilities at one time. But I'm hoping that at least gets you kind of your feet wet with macros. I know that it's not the perfect guide, because there's so much to it that it would just be too much for the scope of the video that I'm trying to do. And this is mostly just for beginners, just trying to learn and get your feet wet with the macros. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to add a comment on the video. We could even give you a link to our Discord, and we can even talk it out if you needed to. So I'm hoping this helps. I'll be making another couple videos on what I feel are the best add-ons and how you use them. And then after that, I'll probably just do things that people request in terms of how to better their play style. So with that, I hope y'all have a wonderful 4th of July, and you guys take care of yourselves.